I am Bahaudin Mujtaba. Today we're going to talk about selecting the right employees. Hiring the right employees is both a science as well as an art, but we must study the scientific elements because that's where we can make minor or incremental improvements at the least. So why do we need to have a careful selection? Why is it important? Because careful selection leads to improved employee and organizational performance in every single industry. Your own performance always depends partly on the performance of your employees. So careful selection can help reduce dysfunctional behaviors in the workplace. And also, it's very costly to recruit and hire employees, even if they are part-time employees. Nonetheless, there's the cost associated with interviewing, training, orienting, and so on. So you have to take all the costs into consideration before you decide to fire somebody. The goal here is to develop employees and help them become the type of employee you need them to be in order to be a high-performing organization. When it comes to hiring, we need to understand the concept of negligent hiring. An employer can be charged with negligent hiring of workers if safeguards are not taken to screen the criminal records or other problems that an employee might be coming in with. So negligent hiring is hiring of workers with criminal records or other such problems without proper safeguards. So can we use testing to select the right employees or to screen the right employees? Of course we can. That's an option. To find the right employee for a job, you can test and screen applicants for specific knowledge and or behavioral competencies that are most critical for the job. Your screening and testing process should be reliable and valid. This is where some statistical methodologies and understanding of obviously significance in surveying becomes very helpful. To be effective, the results of screening tests must be reliable and valid. Reliability means that the results of the test are consistent when the same person is retested with identical or equivalent forms of the test. To estimate a test consistency or reliability, you can obtain a test-retest estimate by administering the same test to the same person at two different points in time and comparing the two scores with each other. You can have an equivalent form estimate by administering a test and then an equivalent form of the test at a later date. Or you can have an internal comparison estimate by posing questions that ask the same thing in different ways to elicit a consistent response from a candidate you're considering for hiring in your department. On the other hand, test validity is the accuracy with which a test interview measures what it purports to measure or fulfills the function it was designed to fulfill. So we need both reliability as well as validity. Validity can have several forms. One is considered criterion validity. The other one is called content validity. When it comes to criterion validity, the scores on the test, which are known as predictors, are related to job performance or the criterion we're using to hire people. On the other hand, when it comes to content validity, make sure that the tests contain a fair sample of the tasks and skills actually needed for the job that you're trying to hire the candidates for. Employers use tests to measure a wide range of candidates' attributes, which can include their cognitive or mental abilities, their motor and physical skills, their personality and interest, as well as their achievement orientation. For example, Outback Steakhouse is a very popular one. They have used pre-employment testing for more than a decade now to identify employees who are highly sociable, meticulous, as well as sympathetic and adaptable to various work environments. Outback Steakhouse uses a special personality assessment test as part of a 3-step pre-employment interview process and compares each candidate's results to the profile of Outback Steakhouse employees that are currently working there. Those who score low on certain traits, like, for example, compassion, don't proceed to the next step of the interview process. Those who score well on traits, for example, like compassion, tend to be interviewed by 2 managers who focus on asking behavioral type of questions, such as, what would you do if a customer asks for a side dish we do not have on the menu? Employers often want to assess a candidate's cognitive abilities to determine whether a supervisory candidate has the intelligence to do the job's paperwork, or a bookkeeper candidate has the required numeric aptitude. So for different jobs, we try to assess candidates on different abilities and skills. Intelligent tests are tests of general intellectual abilities, which can include memory, vocabulary, verbal fluency, as well as numeric ability. What are some personality traits that companies might assess during an interview process? Because oftentimes people are fired for non-conformance, which usually results from personal characteristics such as attitude, motivation, and even temperament, personality tests are used to screen candidates. They might also assess extroversion, emotional stability, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness to experience of a candidate, or obviously all candidates. Conscientiousness shows a consistent relationship with all job performance criteria. Extroversion is a valid predictor of performance for managers and sales employees. Openness to experience and extroversion predicts training efficiency for all occupations. Agreeableness is a tendency to get along with others in your department or in your organization. We know that managers who are high on agreeableness are likable, affectionate, and care about their employees. Managers who score low on agreeableness may be distrustful, unsympathetic, uncooperative, and somewhat antagonistic. Negative affectivity is a person's tendency to experience negative emotions in moods, feel distrust, and be critical of not only him or herself, but as well as others in the department. So people with high negative affectivity scores probably cause a lot of stress in the department. Managers who are high on negative affectivity may often feel angry and dissatisfied and complain about their own and others' lack of progress on specific projects or tasks. Managers who score low on negative affectivity do not tend to experience as many negative emotions and moods and are less pessimistic and critical of themselves and others in the workplace. We may also test people on their internal locus of control, which is believe that you're responsible for your own fate. The fact that your own actions and behaviors are major and decisive determinants of job outcome, at least the ones that we are responsible for. People with an external locus of control believe that outside forces are responsible for what happens to them and around them. They do not think that their own actions make too much of a difference in their successes or in their failures. People with self-esteem, again, can vary from high levels of self-esteem to low levels of self-esteem. So self-esteem is the degree to which people feel good about themselves and their capabilities to get something done. High self-esteem causes a person to feel competent, deserving, and capable of performing specific tasks or responsibilities. On the other hand, people with low self-esteem tend to have poor opinions of themselves and are usually unsure about their capabilities in performing a specific job. What are assessment centers, which are often used to screen out candidates? Assessment center is basically a facility where management candidates are asked to make decisions in hypothetical situations and are scored on their performance. So it's not just one person or two individuals, but rather a group of people who are brought together and asked to be involved in exercises and decisions for various dilemmas. You can have an in-basket. This is where the candidate is faced with an accumulation of reports, memos, notes of incoming phone calls, letters, and other material that needs to get done. Or you can have what we consider leaderless group discussion. A leaderless group is given a discussion question and told to arrive at a group decision. Here you want to know who's making the initiative, who's being proactive, who's influencing others, who's taking the lead, who's trying to obviously bring the team together toward a solution. As part of the assessment center, you can have individuals do presentations. A participant's communication skills in persuasiveness are evaluated by having the candidate make an oral presentation on an assigned topic at the front of a group, or obviously at the front of interviewers, to determine how well they communicate, how well they obviously establish the framework to get the job done or the presentation done in the time that is allotted for them. So how useful are various interviews that we practice in the workplace? Situational interviews yield a higher mean validity than behavioral interviews do. Structured interviews are generally more useful for predicting job performance. One-on-one interviews tend to be more valid than panel interviews. What are some common mistakes that we make during interviews? We can make snap judgments. We can have negative emphasis on certain traits. Not knowing the job, the pressure to hire candidates more quickly, the candidate order error, the influence of nonverbal behavior, attractiveness of the candidates, ingratiation ability of the candidates, as well as nonverbal implications can all be areas where we might make mistakes. In terms of snap judgment, research shows that interviewers jump to conclusions about candidates during the first few minutes of the interview based on the test scores, resumes, and even sometimes first impressions based on what they're wearing or how they perhaps interact with you by saying hello or shaking your hand. Negative emphasis means interviewers search for negative information, are more influenced by unfavorable than favorable information, and are more likely to turn from favorable to unfavorable judgments. Therefore, interviewers need to keep an open mind and consciously work against unwarranted negative impressions about the candidate that they're interviewing. Interviewers who do not know exactly what the job entails and what type of candidate is best suited for it tend to make poor matches. Sometimes there's hiring pressure. We need to hire somebody within the next month, the next 2 weeks, the next 3 months. Candidate order error or contrast is the order in which the interviewer sees applicants affects how the interviewer rates them. The influence of nonverbal behavior is also an area where we make mistakes. Some applicants who demonstrate, let's say, more eye contact between themselves in the various interviewers, or even the big bosses who seem to be more influential, they tend to get more favorable ratings. People who smile, people who move their head more or look toward various interviewers tend to also get higher scores. In other areas, attractiveness. Sometimes we rate attractive candidates a little bit higher compared to others simply because of their good looks, not necessarily because of their qualifications. Ingratiation is another area where sometimes we make mistakes. So some people are good at making friends and ingratiating themselves with others. There are non-verbal implications. Interviewers should guard against the potential biases of attractiveness, gender, race, or how polished the interviewee appears, and concentrate on who the candidate is in what he or she is saying in order to hire the right individual or the right candidate. We need to structure the interview, base questions on actual job duties, use job knowledge, situational or behaviorally oriented questions and objective criteria to assess the ability of the candidate to successfully get the job done if he or she is hired. Train interviewers, use the same questions from all candidates. Use rating scales to rate answers. Use multiple interviewers or panel interviews for more complex jobs. Use structured interview forms to keep track of data that you believe will obviously lead to hiring the right candidate. Can firms use social media to gather information about prospective candidates? Of course. Nowadays, most people who are applying for jobs are obviously connected to various networks. Employers are now checking candidates' social networking sites postings. Recruiters have found that about 31% of applicants had lied about their qualification, and 19% had posted information about their drinking or drug use on various social media websites like Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Whichever approach you use it systematically. A more informal approach is still usually better than nothing when you're making a decision regarding who to hire. The goal is to hire the right individuals. Keep in mind that we always want to have good colleagues, good employees, and good bosses. More importantly, when you're hiring, obviously keep in mind that you're passing on information to the candidate as well as getting information from the candidate to assess whether there's a good match between the candidate and the organization. So it's a give and take process. The goal here is for the employee to be happy and for the organization to be happy with the employee's performance in the coming months and years while he or she is working in the organization. Good luck finding the right candidates for your organization in your department.